Welcome to the New Kind of Man podcast. And today it is a podcast where I am interviewing Scott Flansbaum. And Scott has an amazing story. But before we get to his story that is going to inspire you, I guarantee it's going to inspire you. I just want to give Scott a welcome to the New Kind of Man podcast.
Thanks, brother. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, I've been following your journey on Instagram and just everything, that you kind of put out there. And man, I just want to tell you what really drew me in is all of that stuff that you have gone through that we'll talk about. And dude, you have a smile on your face. Like that is legit. I mean, you just have a smile on your face, and there's just something about that I think that, you have something that men need. And maybe they have it already, but they just don't know where to find it. And hopefully that we'll encourage some guys today. You up for that?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
Cool. Let's do it. All right. So here's where we're going to start. We're going to start with the Fast Five. I know that you were a Marine, and I'm not going to hold that against you, right? Yeah. So don't hold it against me that I was a sailor. I really wasn't a sailor. I worked on F-18, so wore the same uniform. Yeah. But the first question is this: what is your favorite military movie? I think every guy in the military has like a movie. They're like, yes, that's mine.
Oh, not only that, but it got me to want to be in the military. And I think you'll love this. And favorite movie of all time, Top Gun. Top Gun. Everybody thinks it's going to be Full Metal Jacket.
Dude, I would have guessed that.
Yes, Top Gun. Man, I was 9 years old, I want to say. Oh, what a movie. What a recruiting tool, right?
For real.
So, yeah, I'm not smart enough to fly planes, so my dad did. But, but Top Gun, love it. Favorite movie of all time, too.
Gotta love it. Dude, that is absolutely what got me in the Navy. I actually wanted to be an airborne ranger all growing up. My neighbor gave me the ranger handbook. So I was like going through it to learn some skills and trying to how to make fire and do all these types of things. And then I saw Top Gun and on the flight deck, and I was like, okay, this is a game changer. And that's what I did. I was on the flight deck. So that's legit.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome.
All right, bro. So if you could apprentice under anyone from history, who would it be?
Oh, anyone from history. So, gosh. All right, I'm going to sell out. I'm going to go Marine Corps. I'm going to say Chesty Puller. Mm-hmm. If people don't know who that is, that's the godfather of the Marine Corps. He was he's a hero in the Marine Corps. Every night we say goodnight to Chesty Puller, wherever you are. And I would love to be under that man from the greatest generation, you know? And obviously there's a million people that you could say from history, but I'm going to sell out and go Chesty Puller.
Man, that's not selling out. That's legit. I think that's great.
Yeah.
He's a legend. He's a legend in the Corps.
He is a legend. He is the legend. So that's who I go with.
Cool. All right. So the next question is this: what is just something you're thankful for?
Oh, I think now, and we'll get into this, every day I'm thankful I'm not in a wheelchair. I try and inspire people that are in wheelchairs, but I'm thankful every day that I get to walk with my daughters, even if it is with a walker, and I'm not a huge burden on them. So right now I'm thankful every day that I'm not in a wheelchair.
Rock on. So do you listen to podcasts?
I do.
All right.
I'm a podcast. I call myself a podcast connoisseur because I listen to so many. I feel like I'm an expert just because, I listen to too many. So
nice. What would be one or two that would be like on the top of your list? Like, okay, this is on my queue.
Yeah. So Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
He's got to be top of anybody's list. I love Joe Rogan. He's number one. And then my newest one that I love, that I look forward to almost every week when it comes out, is Two Bears, One Cave, which is Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura. If you know those guys, it's one of the funniest. I just find myself laughing out loud so hard at that podcast. And my life's a little difficult right now, so a little humor is is what I need. So Two Bears, One Cave, if you haven't checked it out, it's hilarious.
Oh, I've never even heard of it. That's
Yeah.
a cool tip. Dude, who
Yep.
doesn't need to laugh, right? Life is
Oh,
way too serious and we have to be
yes.
serious. It's like you just need to
Yes.
let off steam and get a good laugh. Great
Yeah.
tip. Never heard of it. So the last one is this. What is the best part of being a dad?
Oh, I think the best part of being dad is just, being a leader to your kids
Hmm.
the, and with that, as you know, you told me before this, you have a 16-year-old daughter, so it changes over time, but
Hmm.
hearing them run in when they're little and scream your name,
Oh,
that's
man.
probably the best part of the day, right? You could be having
Yeah.
the worst day ever, and those girls or those boys or whatever,
Hmm.
you're their hero
Yeah.
until they go through their teenage years,
Yeah.
but eventually you're their hero.
They
That's the
come
best
back.
part.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. They go through middle
So I hear.
school and they
So
come
I
back.
hear. Yeah.
But yeah,
So I
yeah,
hear.
yeah. I'd say I'm very fortunate. My daughter and I we still have a really close relationship, kind of
Oh,
always have. And
yeah.
you got to fight for it though, right? I mean, it just
Oh,
doesn't happen. You got to fight for it.
yeah, 100%. And yeah, like you, I think I'm lucky I still have a relationship with him, but it gets tested, right?
Oh
It gets
man.
tested. But I got a little one right now that, like I said, she might run in at the end of this podcast and you're going to hear her scream out. She's Latin, so she'll scream out, Poppy. And it's just the best part of my day.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
I used to love it when I would come home and especially when my daughter was really young and I'd open the door, and just open the door and just step through the threshold and she would just run
Yes.
at me and meet me with a hug.
Yes.
Dude,
Yeah.
it's like whatever happened, it doesn't matter anymore. Like the
No.
day just got brighter, right?
Yeah. 100%. Like I said, you can have the worst day in the world
Yeah.
and they don't care. They don't know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
Well,
best.
I think we're eventually going to probably talk about maybe the worst day you've had in your life.
Right. Yep.
But I want to start back. We've mentioned, or at least we've kind of teased out the idea that you're a Marine. Tell us about your childhood. How did you choose? I mean, you said it was Top Gun that was influential, but did you always think about the military, or was it just something that you were compelled through that movie?
Yeah, so I don't know when it first started. It was definitely junior high, but my grandfathers were greatest generation, right? World
Hmm.
War II. One of my mom's dad didn't even play in the NFL, even though he could have because he served this country. My
Wow.
other grandfather was the first warrant officer in the Air Force when it changed from the Army to the, Army Air Corps to the Air Force.
Yeah.
My dad was a Vietnam pilot, like just
Hmm.
came from a ton of military in my family. And it's funny, it wasn't, my dad was very proud, to have served in Vietnam and
Hmm.
obviously didn't get much recognition for it when he came back. And so it was always present, but it was never forced upon me at all. But somewhere in junior high, I saw that Marine Corps uniform and found out it was boot camp was the hardest boot camp. And I was
Hmm.
like, that's what I want to do. And, I came from a small town. I came from an upper middle class, you know, two parents that love me. And, everybody has their trials and everything. But overall, like nothing to, there's people that have it worse in life, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, in high school, that was my goal. I was born a leader, and it's funny. Some people ask if you're born a leader or you create leaders. I don't know. I
Hmm.
was just born a leader, and it was funny. One of our priests that was a recon chaplain during Desert Storm was like, "That kid's either going to run the mafia or a a corporation," because I got into trouble,
Yeah.
and in high school, I was like, I don't want to go to school. I want to go in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
I want to go freaking fight.
Hmm.
And I was always a kid in high school that stuck up for kids that couldn't stick up for themselves.
Yeah.
And it caused me a lot of freaking hardship,
I'll bet.
going. growing up, got me in a lot of trouble, just with the wrong crowd, because I always stuck up for people that couldn't stick up for themselves. And
Hmm.
that's the military, right? That's veterans.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was always, but it was like, I could care less about school. It
Mm.
was always the prize was the military. And then, of course, as you know, you spend one day in boot camp and you're like, oh, I'd like to go to school now.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
college looks great.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I was thinking of everybody. I'm like, wow, all my friends are at kegers right now with girls, and I got a
Yeah,
drill instructor's foot up my butt.
yeah,
And it's
exactly.
like, yeah, I'm like, can I rethink this
Yeah.
decision, please? Yeah. So, yeah, it started real young for me, and I don't know what pinpointed besides the uniform,
Hmm.
and of course Top Gun and all that. But once I saw that Marine Corps uniform, I'm like, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah. So I've just thought about this whenever you're talking. It sounds like when you were younger, you were strong-willed, and everybody knew you were strong-willed.
Yeah,
But yeah, they knew there was something great about it. Like your heart was good because you're standing up for people who needed to be stood up for. And I was reading
yeah,
today about parenting strong-willed kids and in how it's best not to. You don't want to break their will, because I mean that's
right.
just a scary thing. You want to bend it toward what's good. And it sounds like you just had this natural inclination toward what was good.
Yeah, sometimes,
Yeah, yeah, well, I mean,
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, we all have stories. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just,
yeah,
we kind of we make our own path, right? When we're
yeah.
younger, and we know the right thing to do, and sometimes we just blockheads and do whatever we want to do.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And so I will say this: no matter how many times I was an idiot and a
Mhm.
dumb kid, if something was going on that wasn't right, somebody was being treated not the right way, I'm proud to say I was always the first one to step up and get in the middle of that, even if it caused me so many problems later on. And I'm talking about with like gangs and
Mhm.
all these different, I mean, I stood up for my best friend, he's getting picked on by a gang. And let me tell you, for the next 9 months, it was hell,
Mhm.
being chased around by gangs. But it was one of those things where I never, whereas everybody else stood around, we're like, we're not getting involved
Yeah.
because we know what's going to come with that.
Mhm.
And it's just one of those things I could never sit back and not, you know, especially in this day and age when you see everybody with their cell phone cameras, when you see somebody going through, oh God, that drives me nuts. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Both.
I'm like, how do you sit there and do that? You know?
Yeah. They sit and video something, and I'm like, why don't you
Yeah.
be a man and step in and take care of it
Yes.
instead of trying to play reporter,
Yeah.
or trying to
It's
make a
like,
dollar off somebody's tragedy? I'm like, step in there,
yeah.
be a man,
Oh
you
God, it
know?
makes me sick. It makes me sick. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was always me growing up. And it's funny because, as you know, being a veteran, it's like, yeah, those are the type of people that in this day and age sign up for the military, right?
Hmm. Yeah. And you and I were actually in before 9/11, right? So it was
Yep.
even a little bit different back then. I mean, it's still a heart to serve, but it wasn't the same motivation. It couldn't have been because 9/11 hadn't happened yet. So I served
Oh,
from 93 to 97. What years did you
yeah.
serve?
95. It's so funny you say that. I just got off the phone before you with a friend of mine who's a combat veteran.
Okay.
And I told him, and we were talking about some of our charity work, and he does stuff for combat veterans. And he was a Marine and everything. I tell him, I go, look, my card was never called,
Yeah.
but doesn't mean we didn't. I mean, I signed up when I was 17. I'm sure you were probably the same thing.
17.
It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it just wasn't called at the time, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, but if that ticket was punched, we'd be there.
Yeah.
And I have no problem sitting there saying, like, I'm not a combat veteran, because it's one of those things where if you don't join the military back then, well, I mean, I guess maybe some people did for college or whatever, but my you don't join the Marine Corps infantry because you want to, do underwater basket weaving, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, and it's just anybody who signs up, it's like, dude, you signed up. All those people that signed up right after me, those guys I trained, guess what happened? 9/11 happened,
Mm.
They didn't know that was going to happen. And yeah, and then the guys that signed up afterwards, good on them.
Yeah.
Good on them, because
They knew what they were getting
just,
into, right?
yeah, yeah,
They were going right
yeah,
into it.
yeah, absolutely. And so I did my time just like you did. And
Hmm.
then it was time to move on and, you know, do other things. So
You know,
yeah.
I struggled for a while. We have a big VA hospital in the city that I live in. And I struggled for a long time with just feeling inferior. Just I'd get around somebody who had actually seen combat or, Vietnam vets. And I mean, I have a high level of respect for Vietnam vets. I just do. I mean, they were
Oh yeah.
not, they were, like you had said with your dad, just not respected when they got back. And now
Right.
we can't even understand that other than in history books or talking to someone who's actually endured
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And so for me, I always had this inferiority complex. I was like, yeah, they'd say, well, you're a vet. They would always affirm me and say, yeah, you're a veteran. I said, yeah, but not the kind of veteran you were. Like, you were there,
Yeah.
you were running through the jungle, or you were flying over, or you were getting in a Huey, you were in the middle of it. And they said, yeah, but you were willing to. So it's really good that, it was good for me to hear that from somebody who'd been there, because I always felt inferior,
No,
you know?
I agree with you. And the same thing. I tell my wife all the time. I go, imagine training. She's a basketball coach and
Mhm.
played basketball. I'm like, imagine practicing basketball for 4 years and never playing a game.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's crazy. And but at the same time, I don't disrespect the fact that what they went through. I know enough veterans. You know enough veterans. It's not fun. War's
Right.
not fun. And I dealt with that too, because just like you, we got out and then 9/11 happened. I'm sure you struggle with, oh, do I go back in? But my
Yeah.
goals had changed at the time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a matter of, look, if it was like World War II and people were coming, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I would have absolutely been right back in. But it was one of those things. I struggled with it too, where it was like, God, do I go back in because, I want to get in the fight? But then I was like, no, dude, you did your time.
Yeah.
You did your time, and your card, like I said, your ticket just wasn't punched.
Right.
So now it's just a matter of, and it's funny because I hear people all the time, because like you look younger, I look younger. I'm sure you get this all the time. Everybody just assumes we were in during the time when the war
Yeah.
was going on, and it's like I don't have a problem telling them, like, no, I don't. They're like, oh, you were in Afghanistan, right, or Iraq? I'm like, no. I'm like, I was before that.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Like,
what?
really?
Yeah. And I'm
I
like,
get it all
yeah,
the
thank
time.
you. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, thank you. But no, I'm actually old.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's just one of those things where now it's like we can do our part,
Yeah.
and just help those that were there.
Mm.
And yeah, so I know what you mean. I used to have that too, especially being an infantry marine, but
Hmm.
it's just like, what am I going to do? It's like I signed up. When I signed up, it just didn't pop off, and that's it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just of just listening to, Navy SEALs too, or somebody who's Marine Recon, even back in those days, it's like before 9/11, before everything happened there.
Mm.
And they would go do things, but it's vastly different than it's been since 9/11.
Oh,
And you just hear that story over and over and over. It's like, you're, you're practicing, training. And it's like, you're waiting to go do something and you don't. So,
no, trust me. All my best friends right now are Navy SEALs and the bad, like DevGru guys.
yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but at the same time, it's like, once again, like we're talking, it's like, don't try and pretend somebody you're not,
Yes.
and just make your own way. There's plenty of ways you can serve, whether you signed up and served, or now you served, your ticket wasn't punched. There's plenty of ways you can serve and be
Yeah.
proud of what you did, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what I kind of put words in your mouth earlier, but I've heard you say it. So, so it's kind of like repeating something I've heard you say in the past. Uh, Take us back to what you would call the worst day of your life.
It wasn't the worst day of my life, funny enough. It
Hmm.
was the second day, worst day of my life, but for this, we'll talk about it.
Hmm.
Um, so, so let me back up. The worst day of my life is I had to let my kids go when I was sick about 10 years before this happened, and to get better, to come back for them.
Mm.
And I was going through this nasty divorce, so I don't want to just leave that hanging, but
Yeah.
it all worked out, right? It all worked out. I came back. I was the best dad I could ever be.
Yeah.
I got better. I was living my life. I had the woman of my dreams. I had my kids. We had our own family. Life was amazing. And because of the military, because of that car accident, I had back issues, and I was having some neck issues where my arm was going numb. And
Mm.
so I was getting these epidural injections, which I've gotten dozens of them. If you've ever had back issues, I'm sure you've probably gotten them. And so I went in for one, and they were so simple at the time. I wouldn't even go under anesthesia anymore. I wouldn't even have my wife come. I go in, I hop on the table, they do it. 15 minutes later, I'd be good.
Hmm.
Make me wait for 15 minutes. Bye, see you later. And these were actually working. They were actually getting rid of that numbness. The problem was is they'd last a month. So I went in for this. It's a Friday morning. It's 8 a.m. We got a barbecue. We were supposed to meet a contractor back at the house at 9, my wife and I, and a barbecue that weekend, typical Friday, right? And I got off the table. I went to sit down for my 15-minute wait period. They're like, "You good?" I'm like, "Yep, good." I went to get up, and instantly I was like, "Ooh, something's wrong." I had this pain.
Mm.
So to make this very short, fast forward 3 hours later, I'm at Mayo Clinic, paralyzed from the chest down.
Wow.
It hit my spinal cord. I had a spinal hematoma in my spinal cord, which is a blood clot.
Okay.
So what happened was they hit my spinal cord. It started bleeding, internally bleeding in my spinal cord. Your spinal cord wants nothing in it but spinal cord fluid.
Mm.
And it started traveling up and down my spinal cord.
Basically filling it with
And
blood. Is that what it's doing?
yep, yep.
Okay.
So it cut off the nervous system, right? That's
Hmm.
why I was paralyzed. And like I said, I'm making the short story of it. So I started with my right leg started going dead, then my left leg. And then we got over to Mayo Clinic finally. And they brought me back from the CT scan. And I looked at my wife and I go, "We got real issues." She's
Mm.
like, "Why is that?" I'm like, "I'm paralyzed from the chest down. Like, I can't feel anything. I can't move anything." And that's where I knew, I'm like, this is not this is getting worse.
Yeah.
So neurology team, which I didn't know at the time, rushes in, and this doctor is measuring me and doing all this stuff. And he finally looks at my wife and I and goes, "I'm sorry, I don't have time to answer questions right now. I have to take all these measurements. I'll get back to you." Basically like, "I don't have time for you right now. I got to do this. I know you have a ton of questions, but I got to do this." So about 15 minutes later, the ER doctor comes in with the neurology team and goes, "Look, this is what's happening. Your spinal cord was hit. You have a spinal hematoma. We don't know how bad it is, but that's why you're paralyzed. We have to get you into surgery like yesterday. And we're prepping the OR, and we're going to do everything in our power to make sure you're not paralyzed for the rest of your life, but we can assure you you will never walk again." And they walk out. And I can't even tell you that
So was your wife in the room at this time too?
oh yeah.
Your
Yeah.
were your daughters too?
No, my daughters weren't there.
Okay.
And my wife and I just looked at each other and just started bawling.
Yeah.
And we're just like what? Like what is happening right now? And so over the next like 2 hours, you know, I don't know, until they took me into the OR, and it's funny, the ER nurse walked in and goes, "Wow, you must be special because we've never seen a patient get prepped for surgery in the ER."
Hmm.
Yeah, and it was because it was so emergency that they didn't even take me up to the OR, to the pre-op to prep me. They were just prepping me right there. And the next thing you know, the head of anesthesia comes in, and it's like, hey, I'm the head of anesthesia. Thank God I went to the Mayo Clinic, and
Yeah.
it just happened to be around the corner here. We have one in Arizona. And he came in, he's like, look, I'm the head of anesthesia for the whole hospital. I'm going to be taking care of you, blah, blah, blah. And then the ER, I don't know if it was the doctor, nurse, or neurology team came in and was like, the good news is the head of neurology, the chief of neurology is the on-call surgeon. So if this was going to happen, today's the day.
Mm.
And,
Wow.
but I didn't even meet him before the surgery. I didn't even meet him. So fast forward around 4:45, I want to say, they took me up to the OR and had to do emergency surgery to stop the bleeding, uh, clean out the blood from my spinal cord. And then you have these, your vertebrae goes around the spinal cord. If anybody's listening, I'm kind of making a motion, like a circular motion. And so they had to, they almost look like butterfly wings that go around your spinal
Mm.
cord. They had to cut that open, like almost like a hinge, and
Wow.
open it up. Yeah, open it up to relieve the pressure. And then they were going to keep it open and cage it because it needed to stay open. And they told me before I went in, they're like, we don't know if it's going to be a 2-inch incision or a 5-inch incision. We just don't know how bad it is. We won't know till we get in there. And fast forward later, they had to cut me over from C2 to T3. So it was probably like a 10 to 12-inch incision.
Wow.
That's how bad it was. Yeah. So, yeah. And when I came out of surgery, I woke up to the neurosurgeon who I met for the first time. And I asked him, I said, hey, man, you do this all the time. He's going through all the tests, and said, how bad was it? And he goes, it was bad.
Mm.
And I'm not going to lie to you. You're never going to walk again. You're going to be in a wheelchair. And it was
Wow.
just like, whoa. So yeah, it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare.
Mm.
And so I came out of surgery. My right leg everything was back except for my right leg. My right leg was still paralyzed. So yeah. And so needless to say, barbecue was canceled for the weekend.
Exactly.
And yeah, it was okay. How do we, like, what do we do?
Wow. And
What
life
do we do?
changed at that moment. I mean,
Yeah.
I I can't even imagine. I mean, my wife and I have gone through some things. She had a kidney. She actually went into kidney failure, and so she ended up going on dialysis and then having a kidney
Oh,
transplant. But
yeah.
it wasn't in a day. So I can't even
Right.
imagine of how. Hearing that news a couple different times, it's like if there was any hope after the surgery, and then the guy comes in and says, "Yeah, you're paralyzed." I can't even imagine how you felt
Oh,
like in that moment.
yeah. And not only that, I mean, I can sit here and tell you this, and you can think about being in a wheelchair, right? You can think about it. But when you are actually given that news and it's real, like you are going to be in a wheelchair the rest of your life, I can't even tell you, because I've seen people in wheelchairs and thought,
Right.
what's their life like, right? It's got to
Mm-hmm.
be difficult, this and that. And we can all do that. And anybody listening to this can do that. But
Yeah.
I can't even tell you how amplified that is when it's real.
Mm. Well, when it's
And
you,
then what?
it's not some
Oh,
guy at Walmart that you're watching their family trying to figure
yeah.
out how to put the wheelchair in the back of the truck or, a motorized cart. It's like it's you.
Oh, and not only that, I was like, the thing that went through my mind is I am going to be the biggest burden
Yeah.
on not only my wife, but my children for the rest of their lives.
Mm. So how
And
did
that's
they,
heavy.
how, how did your wife take all this? I mean, obviously there's tears. I mean, there has to be tears.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
don't go through
yeah,
that. I mean, you're resilient, but in that moment, it has to be just absolute shock and terror. Has to be,
yeah.
even in that moment. So how did she take that?
like you said, we cried for like a minute. And then
Yeah.
after that, honestly, we were so just hit by a bus,
Yeah.
and it's like, you just don't,
Mm.
you just don't. I mean, she instantly, I mean, when they told us that, first thing is, you need to call my mom and tell her to pick up the kids from school.
Yeah.
Like, school gets out in 2 hours, right? And it's
Man.
like, yeah. And it's like, I don't know how she took it, because it's like, I don't even know how I took it. It was so, I tell people all the time, it was like an 18-wheeler T-boned me on the way to work. And
Mm.
then I was paralyzed, because that's how quick it happened.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, she handled it like a boss, and did a great job. And but I tell people all the time, because people are like, wow, you're handling it so well, you're doing this and that. And I'm like, look, I'm not a hero.
Mm.
Everybody, if you were in the same situation, you'd have to handle it too. You don't have a choice, right? The only choice you have is how you handle it.
Right.
So, but that's later on, when you can think
Right.
and gather your wits. But in the moment, I don't know how she did it. I don't know how she handled it. I mean, it's pure adrenaline. It's pure adrenaline.
I think sometimes God just kind of gives us a gift in that moment. Of course, there's tears, there's emotion. I mean, we are humans,
Right,
right? But I think that God also gives us, I think it's a gift that the kind of the instant numbing effect, to where, so we
right,
don't get just like, we just don't go crazy instantaneously, that where
right.
we just kind of like, we go into shock. And I think that's kind of a gift from God, honestly. So we don't get overwhelmed in that moment, because, and then you slowly obviously have to start dealing with the reality of whatever they
Right.
tell you and what that is. But I think that, so you don't have to deal with everything right then. I think sometimes that gets overlooked. And I can tell you that when we got the diagnosis ourselves, and not comparing hurts, because I know better than that, but I know that feeling of
Yeah,
shock. And you're like,
yeah.
okay, what does this mean?
Right.
You know?
100%. 100%. And look, I work in heart and kidneys and liver my whole life. And
Mm.
so, yeah, kidney failure is a big deal if people don't know.
Yeah.
And being on a transplant list is a big deal. And you know better than I do,
Yeah.
those sleepless nights wondering if you're going to find a recipient. And it's the same thing. And I
Yeah.
tell people all the time, that's like one of my number one pieces of advice I give people, because I get this all the time. Oh, my problem's not as bad as yours. I'm like, look, your problems are your problems. It doesn't mean they're not real, and they're not your problems. We're not going to have a
Mm.
contest of who
Yeah.
has it worse,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That
So
I'm
no,
really
I was
glad
just
you
going to say,
said
you've
that.
been through that. You've
Yeah.
been through it.
Yeah. So after you got you got the news, and, just envisioning a wheelchair for the rest of your life, now we can go on Instagram and we can see you walking. So
Right.
I know that didn't happen overnight. So what did it look like from the day that, from the day of surgery? Like, how long were you in the hospital? How long before you walked? And what has life been like since then?
Yeah, great question. So before surgery, before they put me under, like I said, I've worked in the OR before. I've done medical device sales, so I've worked the OR. So the anesthesiologist is putting the mask over my face and telling me, take 10 deep breaths. I'm like, whoa. I'm like,
Mm.
you're putting me under. And he's like, yeah, this is how it goes, buddy. And I was like, time out. I go, I told him a couple of things. I said, first of all, you guys don't know this, but I have 4 girls, one of which just turned 1 a week ago, literally to the
Man.
day. Yeah. And I go, I know you guys probably do your best all the time, but I can't be in a wheelchair. I'm like, I can't. So I need you guys to please, please, like, go above and beyond,
Mm.
you know? And then secondly, I said, can we please pray? And I led them all in prayer. And then I said a
You
prayer to
led
God.
them
And
in prayer.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
Man, that's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And I asked God, I said, if there's any chance I can't be in a wheelchair.
Mm.
I said, I'll do anything,
Mm.
anything. And I said, I'll do anything. You just name it, I'll do it.
Mm.
And then they put me under. And when I came out, my right leg was still paralyzed. And they came in and they said, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're never going to walk again, but you got about 3 months of, you're going to live in this hospital for the next 3 months. Yeah. And first of all, I can't even tell you how much pain I was in, having
Oh,
8
I can't
levels, my
imagine.
neck reconstructed. Like, at least my leg, I didn't feel it, but my neck, oh my goodness. And I didn't even know. So they're like, yeah, you're gonna go do the most intense rehab you could ever imagine. And it's
Mm.
gonna be here. You're gonna live here for the next 3 months. I was so naive, even though working in a hospital setting, I didn't even know there was. I thought rehab, in-house rehab, was for old people, right? That were
Mm.
dying, and I didn't even know
Sure.
there was such a thing. And they go, yeah, you're gonna do that, and then after that, the rest of your life, you're gonna be
Mm.
rehabbing, and just to be in a wheelchair.
And that was at Mayo?
And yeah, that was at Mayo.
Okay.
And so I just said, I made a promise. I'm like, whatever they ask me to do, I'm not going to tell any professional no. And whatever they ask me to do, I'm going to do twice as much.
Mm.
That was that's what I remember from the very first day.
Mm.
So it was like, so I was in ICU for a few days. My leg was paralyzed. They transferred me out of ICU on Sunday. So this happened Friday. Sunday, I get out of ICU, I get to the floor, and PT comes in for the first time. And they're like, we're going to just stand you up, try and put weight on that leg that's paralyzed while we hold you up. And we're going to put you in that chair right there, which is 2 feet away.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh man, I don't know how we're doing this. And the PT guy, that was a big guy, and my nurse was even bigger than me, try and get me up. And if you go on my Instagram, you can see it. I mean, it's brutal. And they get me up, and I put weight on my right leg. And instantly he's like, nope, we're not going to the chair.
Mm.
Like, that was enough. And they put me back down. This is Sunday night. And so my wife had to go back to the house to deal with the kids or whatever.
Mm.
And so she left, and it was like 10 o'clock at night. And I can't tell you, the weirdest thing and the hardest thing about being paralyzed is your brain knows how to move your body, right? So right now you tell yourself, raise your hand, you raise your hand, right? Imagine telling yourself and knowing how to do whatever it is, wiggle your toes. And no matter how hard you try, you can't do it. Like, that signal's cut off. And she was just about to come back. It's like 9:30 at night. And she walks in, and I go, babe, look. She's like, what? I'm like, look at my toes. And my toes were literally wiggling, like my big toe and my, middle finger toes, like moving like millimeters,
Mm.
on
But
my
they're
paralyzed
moving.
leg. Yeah, but you could see they were moving, even though it was a little. And I
Yeah.
was like, look. And she's like, oh my God. She started crying. And I'm like, yeah. And so the next day was Monday. They're like, look, PT's starting. So PT therapists come in, 2 little ladies. They're like, let's go, get up, we're walking. I just started laughing. I'm like, okay. But once again, I wasn't going to tell them no.
Yeah.
And I'm like, good luck, ladies. Like, it just took 2 big dudes to get me out of bed, but go for it.
And that didn't work
And
out too well. So let's see how it goes with you.
yeah. And but they had a hydraulic walker. So
Mm.
once they strapped me in, I'm like, oh, okay, I get this. So needless to say, fast forward, it's Thursday. So not even a week later, 6
Mm-hmm.
days later. And I'm getting ready to be moved to the spinal rehab center, where I'm going to live for the next 3 months.
Mm.
And my sister and my sister-in-law drove through the night to come down to help us take care of the kids, so my wife could always be there for me.
Man.
And it was the day that my sister-in-law was leaving, so my wife was going to go back to real world, taking care of 4 kids. And I was going to be stuck at the hospital, the rehab center by myself, except for when they came. And
Sure.
so, and that's brutal, right? Nobody wants to be in the hospital, let alone alone. And the physical therapist came in, and I've been making progress, and she goes, I don't think you need to go to the rehab center. Like, I think you can go home. She's like muttering this under her breath. I'm like, huh? And she goes, you have stairs at home, right? I'm like, yeah. She goes, if you can climb a couple stairs, then I'll let you go home. And I was like, what? And she takes me over, and I'm like, she's like, the stairs are by your room. I'm like, that's funny. I don't remember seeing PT stairs by my room. And she walks me over to the stairwell of the hospital. And
Oh,
she's like,
wow.
yeah.
Real life
And
PT.
she straps me up to her, like, yeah. And she goes, I'm going to teach you how to walk stairs. I want you to walk 2 stairs, right? Just up 2 stairs and see how you do. And I was like, nope, we're going. And I just took off. And when I say take off, I mean, I took off for me, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
wasn't winning everything. And I
Yeah.
climbed a flight of stairs. And she goes, holy cow. And she goes, I'm dragging my right leg behind me, but I'm climbing. And
Yeah.
she goes, all right, I'm going to show you how to go down, which going downstairs is harder than going up. And
Mm.
so I go downstairs, and I'm like, and I've been documenting my journey. Like, I had realized I'm going to document this. And my wife's not there. I'm like, I have to get this for my wife. And she had a PT assistant. I said, can she please take a video? And she's like, heck no. She goes, you're going to fall on me and I'm going to lose my job. I'm like, I will not fall. I promise. I'm like, please let her take a video. And she's like, no. The last person that told me they weren't going to fall on me fell down the stairs. Okay. So I'm like, no, I promise, please. And I don't know, it's a salesman in me. I guess I sold her. And yeah, I climbed 4 flights of stairs up and down.
Man, that's awesome.
And she's like, you don't have to go to rehab. You can do it, outpatient rehab. And what was so crazy is the neurology nurse practitioner, the first one to tell me that I was going to be in a wheelchair the rest of my life and that my life was over, came over, and she's giving me my discharge instructions. And I look at her and I go, because I can't even believe it, right?
Mm.
And oh man, I'm getting choked up. I remember calling my wife and being like, they're letting me go home. They're letting me go home. And she's like bawling and I'm bawling. And so this lady comes in and she's like, so I'm telling her, I'm like, I stop her for a minute. I'm like, I'm going home. Like, I'm going home.
Mm.
It hadn't even been a week. And she looks at me and she goes, no, you don't understand. Because you could tell she was taken aback. She goes,
Yeah.
you are truly a miracle. She goes,
Wow.
we see this stuff all the time, and you are by far the fastest spinal hematoma recovery we have ever seen. And she goes, and I'm not talking about a little,
Mm.
I'm talking about a lot. And I don't say that to brag, but it's like, whoa, because medical professionals do not throw out the term miracle.
They do not know.
No, because that means they can't quantify,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so I went home, but to make a long story even longer, you asked, and what has my life been like that? It's been hell. It's been
Yeah.
every day fighting to walk again
Mm.
and get everything back that I wanted to get back. And it hasn't come easy. So it's been a life of just recovery.
And I know you were trying to do some fundraising through a GoFundMe, and you did. And
Yeah.
you did that, and that you were trying to raise some money for, it was a specialized brace, right? Or something,
Yeah, it
something.
was basically a robotic exoskeleton for my right leg. So
Wow.
my right leg still doesn't work properly, the one
Mm-hmm.
that was paralyzed even after surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this German company makes essentially a robotic exoskeleton brace that would allow me to ditch my walker and a bunch of other stuff for that leg. But of course, it wasn't covered by insurance, and it was a $90,000 brace, which
Wow.
$60,000 cash. So yeah, And my wife and I are not the type of people to ask for help. And basically, by the grace of God, people were put in our lives that were like, okay, you're not going to ask, we're going to ask.
It's awesome.
And yeah, and in 2.5 weeks, we raised $72,000, which is
Wow.
insane, insane, you know?
I love that. You know, I wish this was everybody's story, but it's not.
No,
But when you hear stuff like that, and we had a very similar thing happen to where, just I don't know, you just have people provide for you. God inspires people to give and provide, and they hear your story or whatever it is, and they're like, I can't do much, but what I can do, and they do whatever they can. And sometimes you just see the very best of people when they see other people
yeah,
suffering. And I wish that was everybody's story, and
yeah,
I know that it's not, but man. But here's the thing: one of the things that I think is really cool is now you're actually not just you're not done with this. I mean, this idea of being unbreakable in the unbreakable journey, it's like you have a 501c3.
right.
And now what do you hope to do now through your story and through this work?
Yeah, so my goal when I started was just to try and inspire my girls and my wife and be
Mhm.
there for them. And that obviously, I never thought in a million years this would turn into what turned into. I mean, we didn't even have being unbreakable as a slogan. That
Mhm.
came probably 9 months into it. And so it's called My Unbreakable Journey, which is the
Mhm.
501c3. So we raised 72 grand, which after fees and all that, basically we got about 8 grand over. And so we did not keep that. We're not using that for the mountain of bills, which from going through this we
Yeah.
have, because our thing was this brace was ridiculously expensive. It was a pipe dream. People came together, like you said, the best of people came together. So every dollar over the 60 grand we put into this 501c3. So it helps start this 501c3.
Mhm.
And it's basically coming together to help other people. It's going to be very veteran focused, but it's not 100% veteran. It's
Mhm.
basically everybody has their unbreakable journey. So you and your wife and your family have your unbreakable journey where you went through, your wife is going through kidney failure, right?
Mhm.
And I'm sure there was moments where it almost broke you,
Yeah.
right? But you guys kept rising to the occasion. You stood strong together. You showed your kids
Mhm.
how, basically you led them and showed them how you get through adversity.
Yeah, my
And
faith was like, that's a question I want to ask you in just a second. My faith was a huge part of that. My wife's faith was really, it was the compelling factor because there's times where you do feel like within myself, I just felt like crumbling. Like, okay, you get bad news and then more bad news, and um, so it is that way.
oh,
It's
100%. And so if you don't mind, we just had our first board meeting. So we kind of came up, we still got to put it, into a perfect mission statement. But if I
sure.
can, there was a couple of lines that came out of it that I'd like to read to you,
Please
what
do.
my unbreakable journey is about. And hold on one second, sorry. Um, but yeah, faith is a big thing because there's no way that we get through this without faith.
Mm.
And sorry, one second. I obviously didn't think this was gonna. Uh, where is this thing? So, anyways, I don't know where it was, but basically, what came out of it was coming together as a community, right? To everybody has their unbreakable journey story.
Mm-hmm.
So finding those people that are fighting, that never give up, right? Through the will to fight, and coming together with their communities to help them, whether it's giving somebody a ride to their uh, doctor's appointment because they don't have,
Yeah.
that's as simple as it can be, right? To providing maybe a wheelchair accessible van, because
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing I found out that insurance doesn't cover, or a robotic brace, right? And through faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
Finding these people, telling their story, and helping people that, and our mission is going to be acute. So people that, like us, had it happen overnight, because there's a lot of nonprofits that help people that, have been struggling for a long time. We'd like to help people, have a real emphasis on people that, need help now.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a lot more that needs to go into it, as far as
Sure.
vetting and all that. But
Right.
that's the mission, and it's very faith based.
Mm.
And just once again, it's like we could have kept that extra $10,000, and trust me, it would help.
I'm
It would
sure.
really help. But it was like, no, we're gonna pay it forward. And like you said, there just needs to be more people out there doing that, and you sharing this on your podcast. And there's so much good out there. That's the one thing I've seen in the last 18 months is I can't even tell you how much good I've seen.
Mm.
And unfortunately, that is not shared enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm 100% behind your message and the mission and vision for your new work. I think that, that it will really take hold, and, you'll get all the details worked out, but my unbreakable journey, it's going to be awesome to watch that unfold and to see, what God does with all of that. Let me, as we're kind of winding down the
Yeah.
podcast, I want to be a respecter of your time, but I want to ask you this: how how was your faith affected through that?
It was, that's where I'm gonna go in here. It was just raised up. Um, I've said this a couple of times. My faith, I've been through a lot, faith wise, good and bad. And I'm proud to say that my faith has never really changed. I've always been, maybe I'm not so much religious, but my faith has never throughout my life gone away. I've
Awesome.
always felt like God's in my corner.
Mm.
And I've always, there's never been a moment in my life where I've been like, screw you, God. Like, why'd you do this to me?
Mhm.
It's just obviously in good times and bad. So my faith just got stronger. And I'm completely convinced in this last 18 months that there's been so many people that have been brought into my life, just you talking to you right now, to the people that put on the fundraiser, to my wife and I getting through this and not being divorced right now, which could easily have happened.
Yeah.
Um, it's just, I try and tell people all the time, just, man, uh, no matter what you're going through, try not to forget about God when you're going through good times, because that's real easy.
Yeah.
But man, when you're, one of my favorite things is Footprints, the poem.
Oh
I
man,
don't
it's
know if you're,
powerful.
I love that. I love that because when you're in your darkest moments, he's carrying you,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's,
I've always been drawn to the imagery of that in the truth
yes.
in it.
Yeah. And I love that. So to anybody out there that might be struggling, it's like lean on him. Lean on him, lean on your family, lean on your friends. But even if you don't have that, you always have God.
Yeah. Well said. Well, Scott, we have hit the end of the podcast today, but I just want you to know that you are a true inspiration, and your message and what you're doing and the integrity, of the dollars. I mean, you could have that money could have been used, and no one would have thought any worse of you. To
Right.
use the excess money to pay off medical bills, because I can't even imagine how much that all told wound up to be. But the thing is, you're a man of integrity, and you said, no, we asked, it was asked for in the name of the brace, and it was paid for and then some. So now you get to, continue that service. The same thing that I believe that brought you into the Marines, the same thing that got your dad and your grandpas into the service. And now you get to live this out in a different way.
Yeah, 100%. And, in a time where I'm not working because I can't work, this will at least allow me to try and do something when I can and help other people and just pay it forward. So honestly, I think that's the key in life, is to help others. And sometimes you're going to take 100%, sometimes you're going to give 100%, but overall, let's just try and help. It sounds so corny, but it's true.
Dude,
We're just out here trying to change the world.
Yeah. And that's, in my work at New Kind of Man, I say that all the time. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to change the world. I'm trying to change the world one man at a time, one marriage at a time, one family at a time, one community at a time, one nation at a time, and then we can change the world.
I believe it.
It's just one person at a time. Getting messages like yours out there, such a positive message, and to see how you are, you're walking and you're living, that unbreakable journey right now. So again, you're an inspiration. I want to say thank you so much for your time. We've been trying to set this up for a while, and we finally got it done, and our conversations aren't over, and we can kind of follow you and in your journey. So if you could just give a short plug and let the listeners know how they can connect with you and continue to watch your story unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing is Instagram. We're working on, we own myunbreakablejourney.com, but there's nothing there right now. So if they just go to Instagram right now, unbreakable_journey, that's my Instagram. I'm documenting this process. We're big on that. Like I said, anything that comes forward, everything we're doing, we'll post on there. And then obviously, as we get more and more professional, we got some money that we're going to give out and change some lives, so people can follow along. And I just appreciate anybody that's helped and anybody that wants to join this. And I appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah. Well done, sir. And I look forward to hearing more about your story later and to see what else happens. It's certainly not over. You're simply just, I believe, just beginning this story and how you're going to help other people and continue to inspire people, and we'll keep watching.
Awesome, man. Thank you.